Hello. This is my discussion of Chapter 1. The topic is invented spelling. You must think I really like this shirt, but the fact is I did both of these videos on the same day. So um, I'm going to talk to you today about invented spelling. First of all, what is invented spelling? Invented spelling refers to young children's attempts to use their best judgment about how words are spelled, and they use a lot of good phonics skill to create the spelling. But because English spelling is so irregular, because um, and your book talks about a lot of those irregularities in chapter 1. It's so irregular that it's difficult for children to learn to spell it correctly at the beginning. But what we think of in terms of invented spelling is the same process that children learn to speak. We don't require absolute correct pronunciation of every single word at the very beginning. If a child says, "I want a tootie," we say, "Oh, you want a cookie?" We model it back to them. Then we go get them the cookie so they get rewarded for the attempt, and we applaud and yay, and when they say "mama," we don't say, "Oh, I'm not doing anything for you until you say mother correctly," right? But we do that to them when they're learning to read and spell. So the idea behind invented spelling is that spelling is developmental just like speaking is, and children will learn the intricacies of spelling by experimenting with it. Of course, this only works if children are actually writing. Now, the first person who really wrote extensively about this was a man by the name of Charles Reed in his dissertation in 1975, and I just wish my dissertation would have become legendary the way his did. But uh, he first identified the idea that children choose phonetically motivated spellings to agree that can be explained as um, uh, as being influenced by their knowledge of phonics. And invented spelling is really, really, really excellent phonics practice, and also it gives the child a chance to explore things in a meaningful way so that um, they're communicating something. Here's an example. My daughter wrote, she's 32 now, but she wrote this when she was small. I just wrote it down for you. It's "I like my bear." She spelled, the words out the way they sounded to her, "like my bear," B-R, That's an example of advanced invented spelling, but that's essentially what Reed said, is that um, they they follow what looks like a fairly predictable uh, set of stages in learning to spell. A lot of people who don't understand it, I remember hearing Rush Limbaugh talk about this on his radio show one day, where he said, modern teachers let children spell things any way they want. Well, that's just terrible. Well, that's because, he doesn't really understand what invented spelling is. There are several stages that preschool and early elementary children go through in learning to spell. In the process of learning to spell, as I said, the stages are predictable. The first is the pre-communicative stage. The child uses symbols from the alphabet, but shows no knowledge of the letter-sound correspondences. The child may lack knowledge of the entire alphabet, in fact, and so you see things like, I saw in church one time a child of perhaps 4 was restless, and the mother gave the child a spiral notebook and a pencil, and the child started to scribble left to right, top to bottom. And the mother said, "What are you doing?" And she was talking while she was doing it. And the mother said, "What are you doing?" And the kid said, "I'm writing a letter to Grandma." Well, it was what she thought was cursive. It was scribble, 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 in lines, top to bottom, left to right. And I wanted to tell the mother she's showing a real knowledge of the linearity and directionality of language, top to bottom, left to right. So that's an example of a pre-communicative stage. Then the next stage is the semiphonic stage. The child begins to understand the letter sound correspondences, usually as a single letter that represents a word, like, for example, the U for you, which we see a lot in texting these days. Then the next stage is the phonetic stage, where they're actually spelling things out the way they sound, but they use rigid rules for letter sounds. For example, the word come is not spelled the way it sounds, but the child who is spelling phonetically or spelling inventively spells the word the way it should actually be spelled, K-O-M. It's exactly the way it's pronounced, come. Or might spell, for example, the example I gave you, where the word bear is B-R, bear. The next is the transitional stage. A lot of times what you'll see here is that they leave out the medial nasals. So if you write the word English, the child would go E-L-S, and leave out the N because they don't know how to spell N, a lot of times the spelling, it's a much easier to read in the transitional stage because it makes sense. For example, the word eagle would be spelled E-G-U-L, eagle. The word hiked would be H-I-K-D. It makes enough sense that it's actually readable. And then they move from the transitional stage, obviously, into the correct stage. Now, the question that you have to deal with in your reading this week has to do with invented spelling, and you have to write it in less than 50 words. So that's just some basic info on invented spelling and some things to understand that you can probably integrate into your response. Have a wonderful week, and I'll look for your stuff on Friday.